Hello. Okay, I would like to introduce myself. I'm Arun Dendukuri, and I'm the founder and CTO of Cloud Evolutions. It's a startup company. It started maybe 9 months ago, and we started working on a couple of things. One, cloud consulting, doing more into cloud architecting, design and architecting, conducting some kind of workshops at the companies. That's one thing. And secondly, recently we started doing the OpenStack deployments with the consultants which we have here locally in Dallas, in New York cities, and also in India too. So that's was one other thing which we do. And secondly, what we also do is offer OpenStack training online, and this is more geared towards taking all the budding young professionals who are administrators and in the database or Linux or network. These are the people we take and we train them and we place them. That's another one which we do. Also, that is what we do. And also we are also, Cloud Evolutions partnered with Nutanix, is the new company, which is a storage company. Basically, our goal is to integrate Nutanix with OpenStack and offer as a service to the customers. That's one thing. And secondly, also with Red Hat, we recently started partnering with Red Hat to deploy OpenStack using Red Hat. So this, in brief, this is what Cloud Evolutions is all about. And let's jump in what we have for this OpenStack Keystone Federation. In the Keystone Federation, this is more geared towards how Keystone is integrated with the Shibboleth and SAML to make a federation possible. This is the whole idea is that, and we are a step closer to it. Now, basically, Cloud Evolutions are more into the storage and server, not into the identity aspects of it. But we recently came into this space, trying to federate identity and offer as a service to the customers, and offering as a consulting services to the customers. That is my goal. So this is actually, to start off, I thought this would be much more interesting. What is happening today in this world? In 2012, we started saying that people used to live in this planet. Now the people are living in the cloud. So now, which is fascinating. And second thing, which really fascinated me, which really attracted me, is about how the companies really look at the companies who are offering their services to deploy OpenStack in their company, in their organizations, whether it's private cloud or public cloud, integrating them. So usually they are shooting darts in the dark to hoping that things would go right. But I have seen there are two ways. It could go either way. It all depends on the destiny. That's what somebody says. But point is, there are companies, the major organizations, the financial organizations, who are spending millions of dollars on with the bigger companies. Still, they are not able to meet their goals and objectives. What I'm trying to get to it is, people, the customers, or the service providers are not really finding out what the customer is looking for from the consumers who are consuming the cloud resources. That is what I'm trying to get it. So having said that, let's get into what we are trying to achieve today. So the goal of this the session is around, the session will be around 30-45 minutes, between 30 and 45 minutes, depending on the questions which we ask. The goal of the session is try to understand what is identity and fundamentals. I don't want to go details, because most of you are already there in OpenStack, know about Keystone. And secondly, we will talk about identity federation. That is where the whole meat of the session will be. And why do you need to federate identity in this case? and what type of Keystone, what is Keystone Federation. So we are talking about identity federation and how Keystone comes into the play when it comes to federating the identity. Keystone can be an identity provider or a service provider, what kind of role it plays into that. Does it have to integrate with any other tools? That is also we are making an attempt to really make it happen, understand those little concepts. And finally, how it is implemented. There are several steps. It is not easy and straightforward, though the documentation, there is no clear documentation anywhere on the OpenStack website or anywhere else. It is not completely, how should I say, integrated in the sense that we don't have one comprehensive document which can tell you this is how it needs to be done. I made an attempt to really bring all these things together and how it can be done, but there are several gaps which I would like to make it much before that point. I would like to make it before. And how it is implemented is the one which we will be talking, but I thought of giving you a demo on how it needs to be. Because of the complexity of the files which needs to be edited, I could not make it possible today. But I'll try to record another session which I will publish it so that I can publish it at the meetup so that you could take a look at it. Okay, identity fundamentals. If you all know what is identity, identity identity by itself is a storing and maintaining the credentials of identity management system, should I say, is in storing and maintaining the credentials which consumers are possessing. They have the user credentials to access the resources or assets which the service provider is having, and the service provider have to have those users credentials needs to be stored somewhere and maintain it and retrieve it, and whenever they want to authenticate, authorize, and conduct any kind of business along with that. And secondly, in the lifecycle management, what happens is another thing which we are talking about is the user provisioning, account management, and deprovisioning. That is what's happening. If you are trying to log into any application, what happens today is you log into the application, you give a user ID password. That particular application is maintaining the data related, the credentials related to that particular user. But as we are going forward with the cloud environment, there is a possibility that we need to extend the cloud, or a cloud burst could happen, or we need to integrate with another cloud, or the maintaining with some millions of users coming in, maintaining that kind of database is becoming impossible. So that is what is happening. So these are the three areas which they are spending a lot of time, and that is where people are looking into federate the identity to elsewhere into identity as to the identity provider. So in the whole, okay, maybe because of operating system, I blame it on operating system, okay? Identity management is responsible for what? There are several elements if you look at it, all things are blurred. I don't want to really go into each one of them, which you already know. The authentication, authorization, identity federation is the one which we'll be talking about today. And the privacy, user centricity, logging and auditing, these are all the elements of identity management system, which any service provider or identity provider has to manage. In this case, let's talk about the service provider who is providing the services for the user to access the assets such as the resources, such as VMs or storage or whatever. And identity, this is one component which we'll be talking today in the security aspects, where identity needs to be federated. It could be accomplished in multiple ways, multiple ways. And one is using multiple IDPs and service providers, or hierarchical storage, or distributed computing. This is how one can federate user credentials. So again, we are coming to the crux of it, federation. In that, what is federation in this? Let's define the federation. Let's define the federation. So what is happening in the federation? In this, we are trying to split authentication and authorization. Till date, if we are not federating, what happens is authentication and authorization happens on the same place. But that is a bigger task which we have seen in the previous slides. We need to split those two actions or tasks so that service provider focuses only on the authorizing or creating the mappings which a user needs to have to access those resources. So it can be done in multiple ways, as I mentioned. So a service provider can use multiple IDPs or multiple SPs to really disseminate its credentials to some other, so that that responsibility is taken by some other identity providers. And the second one in this list is how it can be accomplished in hierarchical storage. Here, by providing access levels, means what it means is if we are providing the access levels, granularity is maintained, so that if somebody is, if there is, let me take a step back and tell you what is the risks associated with it. The risks associated with the identity credentials is data compromise. That is the problem which we are trying to solve. So how we are solving is, one of the method is in the identity federation. So in the why I'm giving you that kind of background is, in the hierarchical or storage, what happens is if you create the access levels in multiple layers, even if one layer is compromised, the whole data is not compromised. That is the reason for hierarchical storage. So that is how, for instance, if we talk about LDAP, LDAP is a good example which I can give you, where data structure is hierarchical. So if nobody can access, in one single statement, nobody can access the whole credentials of one particular user. So that is the reason they store it in hierarchical storage. Another one is distributed computing. Not all the data credentials are stored in one single system. It is stored across the systems. So that's the distributed computing, where what happens, service providers can access the data from all the servers, collate it, and use it as an authorization for the customers. So this is the three ways the identity could be federated. So identity federation is one method used to authenticate it, uses in the IDMS deployment-based classifications. What it means is, in identity management system deployment classification, it is done in three ways. If you look at it, it's three ways. One is isolated, one is centralized, another one is federated. This is the three methods which they do. So that is an IDMS. When you're trying to when you're trying to authenticate or authorize, these are the three methods they use. The one is an isolated, which is where the data is stored within the single storage system, in the single place. The service provider and identity provider are located in the single server, where application user can access those, key in those credentials to access the resources which he is seeking. The second one is centralized, where we are separating the identity provider from the service provider, but in the same organization. It is not federated. It's not going out of the firewall. it is in the same, but is in a different database. Like, Active Directory is one example which I can give you, or LDAP is another one which could be in another level. Another lightweight directory access protocol, which is another one, an example which I can give. So these are the methods which they use to really store the credentials, retrieve the credentials, and maintain the credentials. But the third one in the list is the federated. That is the one which we'll be talking today in detail. So what is identity federation? Identity federation is a secure and easy way to split the authentication and authorization. This is a statement, and I'm just reading it out. But the way of splitting is different for different companies, how they do it. So how it works? So if you look at this, the user, what is it trying to access? Or an application, it goes to the service provider one, whatever, and it keys in the request certain resources, and that provider, because that provider has been federated, it goes to the second place, CSP2, where seeking the authentication of that particular user, which has access to the identity provider. Not the CSP1 that service provider does not have access to the identity provider, but provider 2 has an access to the identity provider. That is where it goes and interrogates, or it gets the credentials or authenticates the credential from the identity provider, which is in the that is where, and it gets those credentials which has been passed on to the user, where the user is authenticated. So the identity provider does two things. One, credential is the credential provider. Another one is attribute provider. What it means is, one thing you should see the problem. The moment you split the authentication and authorization, you see a problem. Can somebody tell me what could be the problem? The problem is, how does the application know what resources which he has access to? If everything is there in the single system, he knows that particular user has access to resources 1, 2, and 3. The moment you federate it, that particular link is broken now. Make sense? So the service provider doesn't know what the user has access to. Somebody has to provide the service provider or the application saying that this particular user has access to certain modules. For instance, if you have a Salesforce.com application, okay, multiple tenants are there in that, okay, or OpenStack application, OpenStack Horizon, or OpenStack have multiple projects in. John Doe goes and logs into the machine and gets the credentials. But how does Horizon know that he has access to project 1, project 2, project 3? It doesn't know. Somebody has to provide this kind of attributes to the service Horizon, saying that, okay, this John Doe has access to the project 1 or project 2 and not others. So these are the attributes which are being maintained in the IDP provider, saying that, okay, this is what it is. And so that when you're sending the credential authentication request back to the service provider, it sends an token which it says that, okay, this particular user belongs to this group, this project, it has access to all those things. So that way the application will tell, okay, you have access to, and you can get into those things and work on those resources. That is how it is. So the critical by splitting the authentication and authorization, the main link is broken, which is being addressed in the attributes. Are you with me, Tila? Cool. So why identity federation now? With this kind of challenges, why do you have a federation? So why do you need to why do you need to federate the identity? So this is the reasons. There are multiple challenges which industry is facing. One is, as we have mentioned in the past, the user provisioning and deprovisioning is the biggest problem. It is not scalable. The moment we have millions of users in a system, it's not scalable. So somewhere we need to split these things. That is one of the challenges which industry is facing. Second, risk associated with the provisioning. And risk associated in the provisioning, in the sense, what it means is data compromise is the biggest problem which we have seen. So maintaining that kind of huge data within the same organization is the biggest challenge which organizations are facing, and they need to pass on that risk to somebody else. Rather, they would like to focus on their core strengths. That is one of the things which they would like to do. Another one is user account management, which is you go and tell, okay, I lost my password. You spend a lot of time and money on the resources to really help them to really reset the password. Rather, so that is another reason. It's more like a maintenance. And the two major things today is cloud brokering and cloud burst. Dell could tell a lot about this one. Nowadays, the consumer is looking for various cloud providers. Is not looking for one single cloud provider. So what they are doing is they are approaching cloud brokers, so that they have access to multiple cloud brokers, which the cloud broker has access to providers. So what it means, the consumer always has an SLAs with the cloud broker, so that seeking certain services which he or she is looking for, or the organization looking for. So the cloud broker is the one who is responsible to get the services from multiple vendors and offer it to the consumer. So in those cases, how do you authenticate multiple users? You cannot keep pushing a single user into multiple service providers. Rather, he has a federated identity within the cloud broker. That is another reason. One is looking for identity federation. And the third, and the cloud burst is another aspect, another challenge which organizations are facing. What the cloud burst is, it is when the consumers are looking for more resources, they need more services, more resources from which they do not have. And they might have to interact with another public cloud or whatever. So in that case, that is where they need to have the federation, which means that they need to seamlessly go and have access to multiple clouds from a single provider, rather creating the users in multiple things, multiple clouds. That becomes a maintenance problem. If a user or a consumer who is accessing the resources leaves the company or gets in promotion, moving to the higher levels, his role is changed. So he may or may not need to have access to those resources. That is the reason people are looking to federate their identity and scaling seamlessly into multiple clouds. So these are the challenges which the industry is facing, which is the reason they are looking for federations. So federating the Keystone. So the Keystone Federation concepts. So what happens? Starting Icehouse, Keystone OpenStack has started supporting Keystone Federation, which they have developed their APIs, which has reached a maturity state. They started supporting SAML assertions to SAML assertions to really pass on the credentials for the cloud service provider for him to really log on into the systems after getting authenticated and get authorized on the resources which he's looking for. So the three APIs which are key components, I should say, are the identity provider APIs, which are given in /OS-federator identity providers, the protocols, what are the different protocols which it supports, and the third one is mapping, which we are talking. So attribute mapping is the one which we are talking. So these three are very critical for making federation possible. These three APIs are important to make APIs possible. So to create mappings, translate attributes to Keystone is these are the things which it does from these APIs does it. So what are the different protocols which it supports? Federation protocols which it supports are SAML, which is Security Assertion Manipulation Language, OpenID, and OAuth. I think I misspelled it, is it right? Big time. Sorry about it. Okay, these are the three protocols. OpenID protocol. SAML, in turn, the Security Assertion Manipulation Language, supports the following implementations. There are two third-party tools or vendors which will support the SAML. One is called Shibboleth and Milne. The whole exercise which we have worked in our environment is with the Shibboleth. That is an service provider comes service discovery and the identity provider. This is the all-inclusive is the Shibboleth, and same is the Milne. So what are the different authentication methods which Keystone supports is an external it supports the passwords, it supports the tokens, it supports the mappings, all those things are supported in these releases. So what is the motivation for mapping? So before we go deep into the federation, we need to understand, keep in mind, because of the splitting, we have an issue of authorization. Now, that is the reason, that is the whole reason for the mapping for that. So the classic example which I can give is, does the user, John Doe, has a role developer or on the projects? If that is the case, how it is been translated into assertions? That is the whole idea. That's the whole idea for us to really map. And so identifying the problems is the one which is which we need to understand. The federated users do not exist in Keystone. And all the things is federated. Now users are existing somewhere else. Keystone only have the groups, projects, domains. These are the whole building blocks which it has. That we need to make use of these resources to map it to the user. That's what we have to do. An identity provider will only return the attributes related to an identity. So the identity provider will release the attributes, which is meant if a John Doe has access to say demo project. That is the only information which has been given to the service provider, saying the demo project has so many services which it can do. That will be provided to the service provider. And the solution which we are trying to provide in this case is create a mapping to handle translation and establish a relationship between Keystone attributes and identity providers. This is exactly what you're trying to do. So what Keystone has, or what OpenStack has, is a mapping engine. It uses the mapping rules to translate the users into some kind of structure that will tell this particular user belongs to this particular project, has access to this project, this groups. Those are the things which will be given in that translation. Initially, a mapping would be one-to-one relationship. So every time, what happens is the iteration continues, until if he seeks, if for instance, John Doe user wants to create a VM, it will see whether he has that kind of privilege to really create a VM. When he's trying to add an volume to it, it goes in the same iteration. So not all until are met, he will not be able to create that user. Yes, it is an cumbersome process, but it is how it is done. But what happens is the token header it gets additive. It keeps on adding to the token header. So mapping engine. Mapping engine was designed to implement the Keystone. So translates assertions, which is SAML assertions, parameters into a set of OpenStack specific parameters, local groups, and user IDs. So sorry about it. Each mapping rule is defined per identity provider and a protocol. So it is every rule is different for identity providers, and basing on the external parameters relevant to the assertion. So each rule consists of two major entries. One is local, another one is remote. These are two entries which are which a token takes to the service provider. And rules are additive, as I mentioned, effective ephemeral identity. So what it means is, it's very plain simple. User's credentials are not stored anywhere in the database. It is ephemeral. It keeps on. It is only for a certain time when you enter it. After that, it is converted into a token and has been transported. It has been translated into all the token attributes and has been passed on to the service provider. That's what it is. So in the mapping engine, what happens is, the Keystone approach to the federation is that the users coming to identity providers are ephemeral. That is ephemeral, meaning that they will not exist in the store or exist or stored anywhere. The reason for this approach is very simple. The reason the user credentials are placed, the federation is evolved that we will not encounter any kind of data compromise. That is the whole reason, and that is the reason the federation came into that. The moment we store the credentials, the purpose of federation has been defeated. The impact of the decision, as I mentioned before, impact of this decision is the individual ephemeral users will not have a sense of authorization. What happens, which one to acquire is not being done. So since we do not be able to assign the user with a role or project, then that is the whole link is broken now. So to address this issue, what happened? That is the reason we are using a mapping engine, which will translate the username and the username password or username to the particular attributes. So who is the user? To which where it is coming from, which identity provider it is coming from, what is the protocol which that is been translated into. And if we basically these credentials will be taken into unscoped token. Does everybody know unscoped token? Is it right? That is the first token which has been given to your user whenever he's logging into Horizon dashboard. Which means that until that time, he or the OpenStack doesn't know what he's trying to achieve. So after that point, that particular token is additive, as I mentioned before. So that token gets updated all the time with a new attributes to which group he belongs to, which domain he belongs to, which projects he has access to. These are the things which which are implemented in this mapping engine. So can you see this one? Man, you cannot, is it right? No. Oh, all it contains is the now users, roles, those are the details it consists. And I tried to increase the font, but now it's going the boundaries. But all it has is what are the different users and what he has access to locally and remote. And what we can also do in this mapping rules is we can delete any user. I mean, that we can deny any user. We can find out. We can put an asterisk, a star marker. We can any number of users, any one of them. Those are the things can be embedded in this mapping rules, and this way we can assign the authorization for that particular user, so that he can access those assets and resources which he is seeking for. Am I putting to you sleep? No. Okay.
You're just going deep enough that there aren't any questions.
So authentication flow, actually. So the user hits a Horizon landing page. Everybody knows the landing page. Upon landing page, the user upon the landing page, the user is given the list of methods to authenticate. So that is what the assertion. What happens is, if we have seen the Horizon dashboard, the latest, the Liberty onwards, they started adding the domain which he or she belongs to. So what is happening if you implement this federation, the domain, along with the domain, we will be having another window or another column, should I say column, place where we can tell, okay, I would like to use the credentials, one. The second one is assertions. So now whether you like to do what kind of authentication method you would like to use, whether it's SAML authentication or OpenID authentication. These are the things, authentication methods which you can show, which I can show you in a pictorial way. I can show you that. That is what he gets the landing page, and the list, it will provide you a list of methods that he would like to get authenticated, the username, password, and service accounts, but also methods authenticating it. Once a user selects the authentication method, it redirects to the external identity provider. It now, from that point, the identity provider takes over, where you will be keying in user ID password in that program. Once it is authenticated, what happens based on the mapping flow, address attribute mapping, it will send you an token, unscoped token. So once the user selected federation flow, it redirected to the external identity provider. The user is redirected to the single sign-on page. At this point, the steps remains the same. The user attributes are sent to the identity provider to the Keystone, and the mapping engine is invoked to returns a token. Where the process differs is what Keystone does with the token. It must post back to the token ID to the Horizon. This is done using the JavaScript, okay, behind the scenes. I'm not trying to pose that. I know a lot of things. What happens under the hood, it's more like a black box to me too. I'm not a developer. I'm not a SAML, but I try to do a lot of digging into what is the flow. So this is the username and password is given to with the token is given to the Keystone, and it returns a token. And this is how it looks before. If you look at it, this is place. Now we can select Keystone credentials or SAML assertions. And once we store, this is the normal login. And once we are there, it'll tell, we can connect, if we say connect, it'll go to this kind of page where we authenticate yourself with the identity provider which is external. So setup and configuration, this is how it works. This end product is that. The setup and configuration is bit of, I should say, bit of a complex because I'm not a Shibboleth guy or a Melon or some identity provider, but no, I tried myself to really dig into the details as much as I can. So the building blocks for this identity, for this configuration is the projects, because we need to know what are the projects, what are the domains, what are the user groups, because we need to build attribute mappings to that user where he belongs to. If a demo user belongs to the demo and admin project, this particular service has these particular endpoints, then we need to give all those privileges, or you have to authorize them. With the technically, we are not authorized anything to the user by itself. What we are trying to do is we are saying that this particular user belongs to this group, this project. That's all we are trying to tell. So within the Keystone, we are already know that what that particular group or that particular project who has access to, or that because based on the role which you are already assigned to that project and the group. So we are assigning the roles to the group. So roles and targets is another building blocks which are really makes this this configuration possible. So you all know about this, in the domains we have users, we can have users, groups, and projects, and we can assign roles to those groups, users, and policies, groups and projects. These are the roles can be assigned to these people. And once we, in the attribute mapping, if we say that no, this particular user belongs to this particular group or project, then we can have multiple entries too. A user can belongs to project A, project B, project 3, or a domain A, domain B. If we have this attribute mapping done, then the user, once he logs in, once he comes over there, along with the token, it comes along with the token. All these details are been given to the Horizon, so that Horizon will give access to those resources in Horizon. So federation protocols, as I mentioned before, there are two things. In the SAML, Keystone supports the following implementations: Shibboleth, the setup, and the Melon is the two different things which are accepted protocols by the Keystone. So what is Shibboleth now? Little bit about Shibboleth. Shibboleth is a standard-based open source software. Again, it's open source for web sign-ons across within the organization. It is an service provider. It is an identity provider. It also discovers resources. It allows sites to make informed authorization decisions for individual access of protected online resources in the privacy-preserving manner. The core, at its core, Shibboleth works with the same way with any other single sign-on applications. What distinguishes Shibboleth from other protocols is in this field. It has 4 components. It works on a web browser, and resources contains a restricted access to the content that user wants, and it can be an identity provider to authenticate the user, and service provider performs SSO process for the resources. So what is OpenStack Federation in this? Now we are coming to the OpenStack, but till now we have been talking about it, OpenStack, but now Federation, we are talking about OpenStack Federation. It is a trust between identity provider and the service provider. So identity provider could be anything. It could be Google could be an identity provider. I have seen people using Google as an identity provider. Single sign-on. You integrate your OpenStack with Google, single sign-on. The moment you integrate it, it uses OpenID. It uses OpenID. The moment if OpenID is configured, then you can go to the Google site and get authenticated, come back to your Horizon, and do the things whatever you want. And identity provider authenticates a user and returns SAML assertions. SAML assertions is the one which will tell you what are the. I should have really given you a SAML assertion statement, but I did not get that one because it's too. At the moment I plug in those XML files, the SAML assertion files, font is getting smaller and smaller because too much of content goes into that. Service provider converts SAML assertions into user attributes using plugins like Modship. So starting SAML2, I should say Mitaka, OpenStack Mitaka, OpenStack is reversing its gate, saying that we are not supporting any more SAML, but we are going into the mapping things, which means the OpenStack thing. I don't know what it does, why it does. So the point which I'm trying to make is, from Mitaka onwards, if you are trying to implement federation, then you will not be using SAML anymore. You will be using mappings. Service provider maps attributes and returns unscoped token. That is the one which an unscoped token is the primary thing which a user gets to really get into the Horizon to check. The moment he gets into Horizon, the first thing which he go into that, whether what kind of projects he has access to, he will click. From that, it goes in the rotation and goes and finds out whether that particular user have access to that particular project or not. That is how it is. I'm putting you to sleep, man. Okay. Prerequisites to run it. So Keystone run Keystone under Apache. So that we normally do is, right, if you are running the WSGI file is now web server gateway interface, that's the one which you use so that we already do it. So configure Apache to use federation capable authentication method, like installing Shibboleth plugins. That's what we did. Configure federation in the Keystone. That is the step which we will be doing. So install in the Shibboleth setup, we install libapache modship2 is the one which we are installing it. And what we are trying to do is in the WSGI keystone.conf file, which is then.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
Ubuntu Red Hat, started with Red Hat comments, and then everything was in Ubuntu, right?
That's right. I said no. I'm a channel. I said no. But
I heard that at the beginning. That everything we saw was Ubuntu. I want to make sure that.
yeah, it's Ubuntu. It's Ubuntu. Well, yes. I know it is a bit of a pain where the config files are located. It is if you are looking for Red Hat, you're looking at httpd conf the files. It is Ubuntu. It's very specific to Ubuntu. Okay. What we are trying to do is establish it. The moment we install SHIB2, what you're trying to do is we are trying to embed certain things related to OS Federation APIs in the WSGI Keystone conf file. That is what are the different protocols we are accepting. So these are all specific to my environment. It doesn't mean that we have to have the same environment. It depends on how we are going to implement it. In my environment, keystone.conf is the WSGI file. In your case, somebody might be using WSGI.keystone.conf is somebody will be using. But no, in case, in your case, in default install, where you like to put admin and main files is CGA bin. Keystone is the place where we put in this admin and where we link keystone.py in CGA Keystone admin on main. That is the place which we do. But no, normally it all depends on how and where you are doing. But no, in a nutshell, what we are trying to achieve is we are linking admin, we are linking main in certain directories. That's what we are trying to do. One thing which I noticed is in Keystone OpenStack Kilo, in the documentation it says that now you curl the keystone.py from that place and put it in www keystone dot whatever into the map, it says that. But for some reason, if you go to the Liberty, that particular command has been erased. I don't know, it's no more there. I don't know what happened behind the scenes is the one which I'm trying to find it out. But I have to get this keystone.py from the kilo version and put it over there. And everybody has the same problem in the, are you getting what I'm trying to say? The keystone.py file, that particular step in when you're trying to configure WSGI, take that, huh? Yeah, the documentation. That's right. Now, what I'm trying to say is, if you have compared, because you have not done kilo, probably you didn't see that. Okay, if you have seen if you have implemented kilo, what happens is now it curls the command wsgi.kin from external site. No, Python, the keystone.py from external site. But that particular step is never done in Liberty. You go to that, if you go back and look at your Liberty and compare Liberty and kilo, you will find the difference. That is a step which is missing in that.
Whatever had a script for Liberty, if I give some inputs, I should be able to go out and install Liberty. I'm trying to do the same thing for Mutaka. It's not working.
No, it doesn't. No, I know. If you're looking for, probably you might have seen that repository, the way you, until kilo used to create a ring. From Liberty, you started creating a software common properties is the file you install it to really set the repository to the Liberty. I'm the only one who's facing these problems, or?
I've had plenty of problems. I might have hit the same one and I didn't realize what it was.
That is easy then.
And okay, coming back.
Keystone has been the most challenging module by far.
Which one?
Keystone.
Keystone, yes.
The one that doesn't ever set up right, it doesn't ever authenticate as it's supposed to. You always got to go find something.
Sometimes, and I have seen some areas, not areas, I should say. But I'm going off tangent, but now we have some time, is it right? Let's discuss certain issues which you have in OpenStack. If you forget to set your repository to Liberty when you're working on Liberty, it defaults to kilo, the previous version. And you get all the binaries of kilo, or the source code of the kilo. And if you're working on multiple nodes, not one single node. If you're working, say for instance, your controller, you started working with the Liberty, and you forget one step of setting your repository to talk to the Liberty repository. If you forget that particular step, what happens is if you're trying to install Keystone client or whatever, it defaults to the kilo, and you can never bring up Nova components, Nova services. Your Neutron will be wacky, all sorts of things. Now you cannot even bring the Horizon to. Anyway, besides the point on. So one.
There are things like kernel version. There are many things that go into it that actually screwed up for you. Like you said, with the default 1404 comes with I think 1404 starting June or May or something like that.
1404 never worked right for me. I had so many issues getting 1404. Yeah, and then so I wound up trying to dial it back even further. The 16 is here today. Keystone is the more.
Keystone, I think they keep changing the conf file goes for they change some settings out there.
Yeah.
What you had working with Open.
It looks like it's running, but nothing will finish.
So this is a completely new topic, and when that is the reason I thought it is interesting. Federation is the one which is really. A lot of companies are doing it, but not very. They could not nail it down right. Yeah. That's right.
The problem with things like federation is that you require outside coordination. So things change. So you're continuously trying to develop that. An open source community that doesn't play well. But when you're a professional company and you have people who are paid to sit there and keep up in real time and be partners with, that's why these things go on in that direction.
So that's good. A good point. Actually, another thing which I have seen is you cannot do this federation on your laptops. The reason is it has to go outside the one because you always NAT it, is it right? Your laptop is already NATed through your router. So your environment, the Horizon IP address is never a static IP. It is always your router's IP, 192.168. What I'm just saying. So it could be. What if you are when you're trying to use an IDP, which is external, that your test lib or sample the sample PHP, what happens is it for testing purpose also. It needs to have a static IP, which you don't have. Then you have to really go DNS and map your whatever the local IP to the DNS and use that. It is such a pain. So that is the reason I have not seen many people trying to attempt to really make federation work in their home environment, and now like what you do for installing OpenStack in your home. It has to have a static IP so that now the external provider can talk to the static IP. It will push and pull the data. That is the reason you need to have a static IP available.
It was on the list of things to do, so that was I'm hoping that you have a list of things that you follow.
Yes. I know, but this document gives you, or this presentation gives you all the things which needs to be done. But so this is a Shibboleth setup actually.
From the outside, does it require open ports for outside initiated inbound?
Oh, of course it is. It needs under the 443, 8443. These are the ports which needs to happen. Generally, Generally, what happens? It uses the 5000 port to really to authenticate the Horizon users. But IDP, if you are trying to use the IDP provider, it uses 443 or 8443, or even if you set it right, you can also use 5002. But no, it needs to have a static IP. Yeah. Horizon and Keystone, it's within the Keystone, so within the Horizon local start.
I mean, the one that Major was talking about, you built it in such a way with Ansible that each of these is containerized.
That's right.
Now you're basically just offering one IP as across the whole of your end-user services.
Very true. Yeah, in Ansible, that is the thing. That's what he has done it. But there's so much of contributions from Ansible in the OpenStack documentation, not from general public saying that, okay, if I'm not using Ansible, I don't have a documentation. The Ansible documentation is huge. Now, if you look at it, there are several documents right from the start to end. But it's if you want to try it at home, several things needs to be done on your whatever servers. Even the servers, if you have inside, doesn't matter. Those servers needs to have in static IP so that it can talk to the identity provider.
I think that I could have multiple OpenStack instances. Let's say I have about like 4 servers. Each server having its own, set up 2 servers with 2 OpenStack instances, and trying to federate across those.
That
is probably
that is a whole test, is it right? That is Keystone. No. That is another thing. What you are trying to tell is Keystone to Keystone authentication, which means that if you have 2 OpenStack places, you are trying to authenticate Keystone to the Keystone authentication. That is a federation which you are trying to do. Mm-hmm.
On it, put LDAP connector on it. You do it, you sign it. You don't want to build yourself a license. You build it in AWS. You build yourself an open pipe in AWS. Spin it up when you want to use it for testing.
That's a good strategy, actually. If you want to really test it at home, if you don't have a static IP, that is the best way to really do it. So, but again, if you are trying to do, then you have to really go back and talk to them. For AD, either you have to go to Amazon or somebody else, is it right? Amazon. LDAP.
You could build yourself a Microsoft Windows server on a 30-day license from Microsoft, right?
But AD is a different issue. The AD.
I'm just thinking AD for LDAP percent.
Okay.
Just server.
Man, that's too. It'll be too complicated. As it is Shibboleth and AZ, we're trying to make it easy.
I was trying to make an external source, not to put it in.
No, if you are really adept, expert in it, no, anything could be possible. If you are really trying to really get into the space federation, man, if you are adding these events, it will be a bigger problem. Anyway, coming to the point, thank you very much for accommodating this kind of conversation. But so prerequisites, this is what I have done. Okay, this is Shibboleth setup. This is the one. Can you see it? Okay. This particular lines, this is related to the Shibboleth and needs to go into the LIFECYCLE keystone.conf file in the file. Even in the documentation, it doesn't say we have two places in a virtual host file. Everybody knows virtual host file is, right? The LIFECYCLE keystone.conf is a virtual host file which we use. We have two ports open in it. One is 5000, one is 357. No documentation says that, no, it has to go into the only 5000 place. No, you don't need to put it in 3537 virtual host. But point which I'm trying to make is we need to add these lines, location parameters, in the virtual host file, which is a LIFECYCLE configuration keystone.conf file. And these things needs to be there for us to really proceed further. And once those setup is complete, we need to enable the LIFECYCLE keystone.conf once again. So it will create a link in sites enabled, and we will enable SSL, we'll enable SHIP2 and restart the Apache server and generate a SHIP keygen, so that it will be the Shibboleth.xml file will be using these key files when it's starting. So what is there in the Shibboleth which we need to mind? The Shibboleth install comes with a regular original entry. So we need to modify certain things in the Shibboleth.xml file. If you look at it, in the entity ID, that is an application defaults, we have in the standard name which is here. We need to provide, this is my static IP, and we are giving that the Shibboleth, and the remote user is TestShibby, which I created. This is an attribute which you are creating. And another one is, this is an external IDP provider. So this is the two things which we need to edit the files in that Shibboleth.exe, Shibboleth2.xml file. These things needs to be changed. There is another way which we can do it is, if you go to testship.org, I think, if you go there, if you give the user ID, where you are installing, where your service provider is, which is a controller, if you provide that name, the server name, our IP address, and say generate, it will build you this XML file with these details. So that the identity provider is the testship.net.org. That is identity provider, and it will give you all the details. Now these two will be, this XML file will be created for you, and all you need to do is come back, take it from your it'll give you it'll be given on the web page itself. That output is given to the web page. You cut and paste on your shell and put it, save it in your etc shibboleth directory. So you will be replacing the original shibboleth.xml file with the new one which is generated TestShip. That is one way to do it. But another way to do is, if you are really good at it, go and edit these two values. So another one which is important is in a metadata, which we need to publish it to IDP provider, metadata of your system. So we are exchanging the data. We are taking the data from identity provider. We are giving the data from your service provider to the identity provider. These are the two things. So you generate the metadata and provide it to a service provider. So we are talking about mappings, right? So attribute settings hyphen map.xml is the file where we go and edit what are the different attributes which we can. So if you look at it, OpenStack user, say a demo is a user. So demo user, what is the roles which he has? Those are the things which we will be putting in that. Again, the mapping rules are given in this. Mapping conditions which we are talking now, in the mapping rules, what we can do is we can eliminate some names, we can include some names. These are things which we can put in. In the mapping rules, if we go back here, we can add the rules next to the type. We can add the rules saying that, okay, these are the rules, anyone or none or something like that. We can add these rules over there. So now configuring OpenStack for federation. These are the things which we need to do. We need to change a keystone.conf file. We need to have a trusted dashboard. So localhost is nothing but where we have the controller where the Keystone is installed. And remote ID attribute, it's a SHIB identity provider. This is the what the API uses. In turn, it knows the provider. It's a service provider. Who is the service provider? SHIB is the service provider for you. Identity provider. So again, in the Horizon, for Horizon, we need to do a lot of things. We need to go back to the same WSGI file and edit these, add these lines over add these lines for SS single sign-on. Those are the things which needs to be given so that we can, those will be ported into the local settings. What is that file called? In dashboard, we have some file, local settings. So those will be reflected over here. Here, two things we are enabling. One is SAML2, WebSSO SAML2, WebSSO auth. These are the two things which will be for identity providers and for service provider. These are the two things which we will be doing. Changing this. These are the lines needs to be added for the virtual host with the port 5000. And the Horizon setup. In the Horizon setup, if you go to the local settings, we need to change these things. One is API versions should be given to the only version 3. And OpenStack URL should be local host or controller, whatever the IP, whichever. Technically, what happens is if my local host or my controller has an static IP, it is never in the DNS. Is it right? So if I put a controller over there, it doesn't work much. That is another problem which you are saying. So unless we push it to DNS, then only we can say that is ruled out. So we provide IP address in that. So WebSSO enabled. So these are the things which can be given so that these are visible in our login screen. That's it. Man, we swim through. So any questions?
All right, so based on the presentation, this setup is not for authenticating multiple independent OpenStack
I see a multi-cloud you're talking about, multi-cloud, OpenStack multi-clouds?
Yeah. So
it is not
private clouds and you want to have those authenticate to one system through one authentication system. That's not going to work that.
There are a few more modifications. No, it's only it does only partially. The same configuration goes for that. Now, if we are doing a keystone to keystone, if you're talking about keystone to keystone, if you have two private cloud environments or OpenStack environments, and you are trying to integrate these two from a different IDP provider, yes, it is possible. Yes. That's what we are trying to achieve, is it right? We are that identity provider. We are providing that all that. If you look at it, one of the steps we are pushing the service provider. So service Keystone combined with Shibboleth is a service provider now. Okay, Keystone combined with the Shibboleth is a service provider on one environment, in domain 1. Domain 2, the same case. We will be pushing 2 different files to that identity provider so that no one can access. So that user can have access to any one of these clouds.
So, what about Shibboleth? Now, since that is going to be gone.
No, Shibboleth is not going.
Well, SAML, sorry.
SAML.
Yeah. Since that's going to be, is mapping going to be the bigger feature?
Yeah, mapping will be the feature. So now we can be using JSONs or whatever. We'll be using that. So basically, it's an API, which is provided by the OpenStack. That API will be using it. That's it. So scale 1 to 10, what is it? Does it really interest you, or is it? Oh, okay.
Federation is hard, right? And you jumped in, took us to about 6 or 7. Yeah, it's not a solved problem, right? We would all bring our own off store, whatever we wanted, right? Yeah.
Okay.
So does your company actually provide the service?
Yes.
And if you pay him, you can't have it.
Okay, gentlemen, thank you very much.